Many characters have been speculated for release by the community from cutscenes and in-game voice lines from other characters. The character that I'm talking about today has been anticipated by the community for a couple of months now, and even has some Twitter stan accounts made of him even though he's not even out yet. If you are up to date with all the Genshin leaks, you might know that Kamisato Ayato is planned to have a banner soon, and in this video I'm going to be going over what's been leaked so far, go over what his abilities do, and talk about what artifacts would go well with him. First of all, Ayato unfortunately looks like a sub DPS sword user who wields a Hydro Vision and attacks insanely quick. But I don't care, I'm playing him as a main DPS and probably a lot of people are too. Now, there's not much gameplay on him, so you'll be seeing some repeated clips in the video when I'm trying to explain some of his abilities. Okay, so his normal attacks have 5 consecutive slashes. That seem pretty slow in this leak, but I assume it's faster in the game because the leak is just supposed to show the entire animation. The charge attack looks really pretty with the yellow slash lines in the air, and he has that cool anime thing where they pull out the sword and put it back in their sheath really quick, so that's kind of cool too. But the normal attacks isn't the thing that makes this character really cool. The coolest thing in my opinion is his ability called Kyoka. When he uses this ability, an illusion shows up taunting nearby enemies in front of you. After that, he can quickly slash the enemies around him, dealing hydro damage. When he hits an enemy, he gains a stack of Wave Flash, which increases the damage of each slash afterwards based on his max HP up to 4 times. After the illusion is attacked or the cooldown ends, it explodes, dealing AoE hydro damage to nearby enemies. Another thing is, when you have the talent Kiyotaki Jouhou, you get 2 Wave Flash stacks as soon as you use your ability, and max stacks if your illusion explodes or gets attacked. But in simple terms, when you use your ability, this taunts your enemies, bringing them right in front of you, then you can slash them a bunch of times. After each slash, you gain a stack of Wave Flash, which increases your damage based on how much HP you have, and then, if your illusion gets attacked or the cooldown ends, it explodes, dealing more damage. Another thing is, you can lower the cooldown of this entire ability by attacking enemies with the other characters in your party. Okay, cool. We're done with the most confusing part about his kit. Lastly is his ult, which if you've seen Ganyu's ult, it's essentially just the same thing but Hydro. Basically, when you ult, you lay down this area which rains down water swords, dealing Hydro damage and increases the attack speed of your other party members. Now we're on to artifacts. In my opinion, the best set for Ayato would be the Heart of Depth set, which I already have insane pieces for because I main Childe. The 2-piece set gives you a 15% hydro damage bonus, but the 4-piece set gives you a 30% attack boost when you use your ability for 15 seconds. Since Ayato's ability lasts for 16 seconds, there will be 1 second where you don't have a 30% attack boost. Terrible, right? Now, farming this artifact set would be really good, especially for the people who have Ganyu, because you can farm for both characters. But you can really use any other cryo character that applies cryo off-field, such as Kaya or Shenhe if you have her. Saying that Ayato applies Hydro very quickly with his ult, you want a cryo character to perma-freeze your enemies. Now we're going to go over Constellations, which are really good and increases damage by a good amount. His first Constellation increases his damage by 30% against enemies under 50% HP, which is pretty self-explanatory. If you really want his Constellations and can only get the first one, in my opinion, this one is not really worth it and you should really just save your primos. His second Constellation, after reading it, sounds insanely good in my opinion, but basically it increases your Wave Flash stacks, which I talked about earlier, from 4 to 5. Not only that, when you have at least 3 stacks, your max HP gets increased by 40%, which in turn increases the damage you gain from each stack because it scales off of HP. If anything, I feel like this Constellation is really good, especially if you're running him as a main DPS. His third Constellation just increases your ability's talent by 3, which is also good for a main DPS Ayato. Now, if you just want to run Ayato as a main DPS, then you can stop getting Constellations here, because his 4th and 5th Constellations are mainly support and don't really increase his damage at all. His 4th Constellation increases all of the party members' normal attack damage by 20% when he uses his ult, which would be good for a support or even a sub DPS Ayato, but it doesn't increase his damage at all. His 5th Constellation increases his ult's talent level by 3, which again is good for a support or sub DPS Ayato, but probably doesn't increase his damage that much. Now his 6th Constellation is a little confusing, but it creates 2 extra slashes when you hit an enemy in your ability stance, with each slash dealing 300% of Ayato's attack as damage, but it doesn't get affected by the Wave Flash stacks. However, in my opinion, all the Constellations after the 3rd one is not worth spending like a minimum of $800 on them, and you should rather spend that money on something like NFTs or something. Now I'm going to talk about his best weapons. The weapons that'll be featured with his banner is supposed to be his best in slot. The Haran Tsukishiro Futsu at R1 increases your elemental damage by 12%. Also, when one of your other party members hits an enemy with their normal attacks, you get a stack of Wave Spike, which caps at 5. When the character that has this weapon equipped uses an elemental skill, it uses all the stacks, each stack giving you 8% increased normal attack damage for 8 seconds. So in short, this weapon is good if you need the extra crit rate and are fine with swapping off of him every 8 seconds to regain those Wave Spike stacks. In my opinion, that isn't really worth it, and I'd much rather have the Primordial Jade Cutter over this sword. But that's his featured weapon. I'm now going to talk about the other weapons that I feel would be good for him, but I'm not going to do any percentages or math or anything, so this is just my opinion. For For 5-star weapons, the Mist Splitter and Primordial Jade Cutter, being some of the best DPS swords, are both really good for him. Both having crit as the substat and directly increasing his damage, probably more than the Haran, Suki, whatever. Another good 5-star option for him would be Skyward Blade if you're running him as a support or sub DPS, giving him some crit rate, high ER, and a pretty good damage boost. Next, for 4-star weapons, the Black Sword is another pretty good option for him, especially if you're getting the Battle Pass. It gives you a decent amount of crit rate along with a 20% normal and charge attack boost. It also heals you when you hit a crit hit, which is pretty cool too. There's also the Blackcliff Longsword, which gives you crit damage and a decently high base attack. But the passive has little to no effect if you're versing just one boss, which is the only downside to the Blackcliff set, but it's also a pretty good free-to-play option for him because of the crit damage. Another good main DPS weapon I feel would be the Flute, which could be a viable option because of the decently high base attack and a passive that gives you extra damage after you get 5 hits in. So in conclusion, I feel like a lot of people are going to be pulling for Ayato because of his really smooth animations and because, I don't know, he's hot maybe? But in my opinion, I think he looks better in the rumors.